The purpose of this handout is to practice color matching. So we're going to be mixing our hues to create the different tones, tints, and shades of the different areas of the reference picture. So all of the squares or rectangles on the handout we're going to be filling in to match the surrounding colors and values. The goal of this worksheet is to make the paint blend in with the surroundings when you fill in the rectangle. So in the upper left-hand corner of this leaf is the area that was already filled in with paint. And you can see that it does fade pretty well where the value, the tone, and the tint match the surrounding areas. And then the inside is mixed together as well so that it fades from the surrounding or the outside parts of the rectangle towards the middle. So that is our goal, to blend these empty squares in with the surroundings. To get started, I'm going to begin by mixing my hue. And then after the hue is mixed, I'm going to move on and think about if it's dark, is it light, is it desaturated? But start with the hue. So looking at the outside of that rectangle in the upper left-hand corner, it's mainly an orange hue. So I'm going to start with a nice orange hue and then add more yellow to it or more red depending on the specific area that I'm filling in. Now, once I had my orange, I added a little bit of blue into it because I wanted to desaturate my color. So looking at the colors around the outside of that leaf, they're mainly desaturated, which means they're not very bright or vivid. So to desaturate a color, you can add the complement to it. So the complementary color to orange is blue, or you can mix a little bit of the white and black together to tone it down as well. So this color that I have mixed is going to be my base color, and from there I can decide if I want to add a little bit more red or yellow, or if it needs toned down more, depending on the area that I'm filling in within that rectangle. Now I'm going to take the color that I have mixed and add it to a small square piece of paper so that I'm able to hold this up to my reference picture and see how the color compares. So up until this point, we've really just been focused on the hue and the tone, so how bright and vivid it is. But now it's time to think about the lightness or darkness and add that into our mixture. So right now I'm adding a little bit of white into my color, and I'm going to mix this off to the side so that I still have that base color to come back to. Now after I added the white, I felt like it needed to be a little bit brighter, so I added more of the yellow into the mixture. And then I'm just going to continue refining that color, holding it up to my reference picture until I feel like I have a good color to add onto that rectangle. So I'm going to get started with adding some paint into the rectangle there. And then since we're working with the acrylic paint, you can always go back over top of it if it's not a perfect mixture once you apply it. I'm starting out where it's a little bit more of that orange value and then fading that down towards the bottom. And you'll notice I grabbed just a little bit of the white and mixed it almost directly onto my rectangle. So you could, if you're just adding a little bit of one color, mix directly onto your paper versus mixing it separately first. It's definitely good to get a good base value and hue mixed first. But again, if you need to just lighten or darken something or slightly change the color, you can always mix directly onto your paper if you just need that little bit added in that one spot. So I'm starting to block in this larger area of values. So in the middle, it's trickier to color match what it is. You can look back at the original reference picture if you have that and see what the color is in the middle, or you can just kind of fade the top and the bottom colors towards the middle until they meet. So that's what I'm doing, is just kind of blurring out and blending the colors from the top into the bottom and trying to mix everything from the outside towards the middle as I go. So right now I'm working on lightening up that little area that was yellow to the right of the orange value, and then continuing to add a little bit more white to lighten it directly onto the paper here. So that I can slightly adjust that color that's already added. I'm working with a very thin paintbrush, and I'm also working with small brush strokes. So I'm not completely smoothing things out because the texture of the leaf is what I'm trying to replicate here. So now I'm mixing a darker value. So I'm trying to get a black in order to create shades. So I'm using equal parts of my three primaries, yellow, red, and blue, mixing those together to create my black value. The purpose of mixing black versus using the black directly out of a bottle is because it is more natural. Even looking at this leaf reference picture, you're able to see that it's not a pure black, but it's more of a softer value. So I'm using that and adding it onto my paper so I can look at how this color compares, and then adding it off to the side a little bit, bringing in a little bit more blue because the tone of that shadow area on the leaf is a little bit darker with that blue value bleeding through. So I'm going to bring this down and connect these lines a little bit and continue the lines from the outside corners of the rectangle all the way through the space here. Now I'm just continuing to color match and build my layers. So I'm really looking at the color on the outside. Remember to match the hue first, and then the tone, and then match the value. So I'm trying to figure out, is this more orange? Is this more red? Does it have more of a yellow tint? And then go from there. Now, once you apply your paint, like I said, it can dry and you can add a new layer if you feel like the color that you have on there isn't perfect. So definitely give something a try, see how it looks, and then readjust as you go. So I'm mainly mixing my yellows and reds together and then adding a little bit of the blue as a complementary color to the orange to desaturate that value. Again, I could add the black and the white together too to desaturate it as well. So that would be looking at the tone. There are a few areas around the outside of that rectangle that are a little bit brighter. So that would be the upper right-hand corner of the rectangle that's a little bit more vivid versus the bottom left-hand corner that's a little bit darker and a lot more desaturated. Now you'll notice I also mixed a light purple shade. So I used a little bit of blue, a little bit of red, and a little bit of white, and I used that light purple shade on the outside of where that dark line is. So there's that light purple value that's kind of on the outsides of both of those sides of that dark line. So moving on, I'm just continuing to fill in and color match. I'm using, like I said before, that toned down orange color, and then continuing to tone it down, adding a little bit of black as I go down towards the bottom left-hand corner. Continue to use a small piece of paper to put the paint on first if you want to test out what your color and value look like before you mix it on there. Right now I'm just mixing more black because I ran out, so make sure that you are mixing that, using it enough to darken your value, mainly in that bottom left-hand corner and bottom right-hand corner of this rectangle. And then I'm also kind of fading out the paint on top of the picture just a little bit, as this will help to blend the area of the paint in with the picture to help it match and fade a little bit easier. So I'm continuing to build layers using short brush strokes to give it a little bit of texture, and just really taking my time to match each of the hues, values, and tones of the specific areas that I'm filling in. On the outside of that little bright yellow spot, there's a little bit more of an orange value. Right now it's a little bit too vivid, so I'm going to have to lighten it a little bit for the tint and then desaturate that tone as well. So here's a little bit of that darker value brought into it. And then I'm extending that down to meet with that darker line on the bottom. And using a very thin paintbrush, I'm painting over top to have that darkest line go all the way down. So then I'm working on that upper right hand corner, trying to color match. I had it a little bit too yellow, so I had to bring in some more orange and then even a slight bit of blue to desaturate it, and then just filling in that large center area with a muted yellow orange color. Then filling in that last little bit, it's a little darker, desaturated, and has some splotches of black. And then there's this more reddish orange here with a little bit lighter value, so I'm bringing in the white. And then I'm just continuing to make sure that that little edge where the actual reference picture is matches my color the best that it can. So it felt a little too vibrant, so I mixed that gray tone to desaturate it, brought in a little bit more yellow, a little bit more red. So I'm just really looking at the hues and trying to blend that to match the outside colors. So now I'm going to add one last final detail layer, making sure that I have all of these lines and textures on top to really refine and finish off the leaf. So you can see that upper left-hand corner is where the box is that I just filled in. So your goal is to try to make that box disappear. So match first the hue, try to figure out, is this more orange, yellow, or red? And then match the tone. How desaturated is it? Do you need to add some gray or the complementary color to tone it down? And then ask yourself, what value is it? Is this light? Is it dark? Do I need to bring in white or black to create a tint or a shade? When you're finished filling in the 2 rectangles on that first leaf, you're going to be moving on to the green leaves next. So this is just to practice mixing some different colors. You'll definitely want to look at the reference picture for this to see how you completely fill in the missing spaces. But really look at the shades and values with this. A lot of these tones are darker on the left rectangle and then a little bit lighter on the right rectangle. Ask yourself, how much yellow do you have to add into your mixture? And then areas that are desaturated or not very vibrant, you'll want to mix a little bit of red or that gray tone to dull it down. But go through and finish up filling in each of those rectangles, focusing on color mixing and matching as you're working.